In Nicaragua, President Daniel Ortega highlights the heroic deeds of the Nicaraguan people on the 44th anniversary of the Sandinista Revolution. The president also defended the decision of not signing the final resolution of the EU Select Summit held in Brussels. In Spain, the last televised debate was held ahead of Sunday's general elections without the presence of the Popular Party candidate. And Kenya was bracing on Wednesday for another tense day of opposition protest. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Peru, the national police officers clashed with protesters in the capital on Wednesday as part of the third takeover of Lima, a nationwide protest in which thousands of people are demanding the resignation of President Dina Boluarte. Some demonstrators were injured when they attempted to break through the police in the area of the Congress of the Republic by throwing tear gas and using force. Demonstrators arrived at the seat of Parliament, which was completely barricaded shortly after 6:15 p.m. local time. Social groups have called for a mobilization on July 19th called the Taking of Lima to demand the resignation of President Dina Boluarte and the closure of the Congress of the Republic in the context of a political crisis that began on December 7th with the impeachment of President Pedro Castillo. The National Association of Journalists of Peru announced on its Twitter account that journalist Gabriel Ramos Carvajal had been hit by a barrage of bullets on Abancay Avenue near the public prosecutor's office. She was evacuated to a nearby hospital. On Wednesday, the Peruvian National Police threw tear gas canister at demonstrators in the city of Huancavelica in the department of the same name, according to local media. The incident took place at noon before the biggest demonstration in the capital, Lima. According to the local media Huanca World Times, the strike is almost absolute in Huancavelica. Traders have stopped working on the campus of the university city of Pampa, which remains closed for the second day in a row. It reported, according to the Ombudsman's office on its Twitter account, marches are being held in 35 provinces and 8 national roadblocks. On Wednesday, a petition endorsed by several activist organizations from the United States and the world asking for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Peru was delivered at the site of the U.S. Congress. The petition was signed by nearly 2,000 people and organizations in Peru, the United States, and around the world, and it is addressed to the Committees of Foreign Relations and on Appropriations of the U.S. House of Representatives. In June, over 1,200 U.S. military troops entered Peruvian territory with weapons of war and military equipment in an operation called Sentinel Resolute, together with the Peruvian Armed Forces. The drills are being carried out in the south of the country and are expected to run through December 2023. The petition claims that the U.S. troops are helping the de facto regime to massacre the people of Peru.
Swanson, Executive Director of World Beyond War. I'm here with Medea Benjamin of Code Pink and other friends and allies from Peru and from the United States to deliver this petition to the United States Congress, to the leaders of key committees, telling them that we do not want U.S. troops in Peru. We don't want U.S. troops in any countries, but to be sending U.S. troops in a time of crisis to support a coup government that is brutalizing the people of Peru is exactly the wrong idea. This is the first, easiest place to say no, get the U.S. troops out and don't send more in.
In Venezuela, the mobilizations of the revolutionary forces continue in support of Nicolás Maduro's government and in rejection of the unilateral and coercive measures taken by the U.S. In the city of Petare, Miranda State, the revolutionary forces took to the streets with slogans and banners in support of the Bolivarian Revolution. Vice President of the Organization of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Pedro Infante, pointed out that the struggle is being waged with the aim of building the future. He also added that these demonstrations are strong signs of support for the working people in the face of sanctions and blockade. In Venezuela, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, affirmed that they will never allow any foreign power to interfere in the internal affairs of the country.
Venezuela will never accept, never, that a foreign power or a foreign country or a foreign government try to interfere in the affairs that only concern Venezuelan men and women. We do not interfere in anyone's affairs. There are elections in the government of Spain. Very well, may they go very well, and may the elections take place in peace and within the canons established by the electoral authority of that country. And whoever won, won, and whoever lost, lost. We do not interfere in the affairs of Europe. We do not interfere in the affairs of France. We do not interfere in the affairs of Great Britain. We do not interfere in the affairs of Portugal. Why do other countries have to come and interfere in Venezuelan affairs?
Jorge Rodriguez ratified the statement signed in Brussels expressing the request for the lifting of sanctions and the holding of elections.
The President referred, and I do the same, to the communique that was published yesterday, signed by President Macron, by President Lula da Silva, by President Gustavo Petro, by the Vice President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, by the President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, where expressly there is a paragraph that states, "We request the lifting of all sanctions and the holding of free elections in Venezuela, as are all elections in Venezuela."
Moreover, the head of the Venezuelan parliament highlighted the announcement made by President Nicolás Maduro, where he refers to the consensus on dialogue and the need to eliminate the sanctions and coercive measures imposed against Venezuela.
As indeed the President says, there was a consensus on the need to eliminate all unilateral, illegal, irregular, and illegitimate coercive measures against Venezuela. The return, in all its parts and in all its value, of all the assets that belong to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. They keep talking about free and fair elections, but Venezuela has been subjected to a brutal siege since 2016. President Maduro was re-elected in 2018, but do the math. We are already 8 years down the road.
The president of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, highlighted the heroic deeds of the Nicaraguan people on the 44th anniversary of the Sandinista Revolution. During his speech, Ortega justified the decision not to sign the final declaration of the summit held between the European Union and CELAC. Ortega shared his reflection before a crowd gathered at the Plaza La Fe. Government delegations from countries such as Cuba, Russia, Iran, and Palestine, as well as representations from China and other nations from Asia, Europe, Africa, and Central America, also participated in the activities. During his speech, the president emphasized that with the triumph of the Sandinista Popular Revolution in Nicaragua on July 19, 1979, came the end of the 45 years of exploitation by the Somoza military dictatorship. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Wednesday, 3 of the 4 main leaders held the last televised debate in Spain ahead of Sunday's general elections. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, the leader of the ruling Sumar party, Yolanda Díaz, and the head of the opposition Vox party, Santiago Pascal, took part in the electoral debate. Gender policies cover a large part of the 90 minutes of the discussion, in which topics such as labor reform, pensions, social rights, and even climate change were also discussed. In her speech, Yolanda Díaz advocated for the reduction of the working day and improvements in wages. She also added that Sumar is the guarantee for a better government with more rights. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia is ready to return to the grain deal immediately if all previously agreed upon conditions for its participation in the initiative are met and the arrangement's original humanitarian essence is restored. President Putin also said that Russia repeatedly extended the grain deal, demonstrating miracles of endurance and patience and tolerance. Putin also noted that the grain deal led to direct losses for Russian farmers, which reached $1.2 billion. Additionally, the president stated that the West even creates obstacles to Russia's free deliveries of fertilizers to the poorest countries. Finally, President Putin asserted that Moscow is not against the grain deal and will consider the possibility to return only if all previously agreed upon conditions for participation are met.
The first is the withdrawal of sanctions on supplies of Russian grain and fertilizers to world markets. Second, all obstacles for Russian banks and financial institutions serving food and fertilizer supplies must be removed, talking about their immediate connection to the SWIFT international banking settlement system. We do not need any promises on this score and any ideas. We need these conditions to be met. Deliveries of spare parts and components for agricultural machinery and the fertilizer industry to Russia should be resumed. Furthermore, all issues with the rental of ships and the insurance of Russian export food supplies should be resolved. All food supply logistics should be secured. Further, unhindered conditions must be provided for expanding the supply of Russian fertilizers and the raw materials for their production.
Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said China is willing to work with BRICS partners to inject positive energy into the turbulent and changing world.
The meeting of BRICS national security advisors and high representatives on national security is an important platform for BRICS countries to carry out political and security cooperation. China looks forward to having in-depth exchanges of views with BRICS partners on the current international security situation and issues of mutual interest at the meeting, building up consensus and deepening cooperation, so as to provide positive energy for a world that is experiences turbulence and transformation, and make political preparation for the BRICS summit to be held in August this year.
On Wednesday, Premier Li Qiang praised China's relationship with Algeria during a bilateral meeting in Beijing with Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. China and Algeria should expand cooperation in emerging areas such as information, technology, digital economy, new energy vehicles, and space satellites to set an example for high-tech cooperation among developing countries. Li Qiang noted that China will continue to firmly support Algeria in safeguarding national sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, taking a development path suited to its national conditions and opposing external interference in Algeria's internal affairs. He also stated that the two sides should further strengthen cooperation in infrastructure, construction, and other traditional areas to achieve mutually beneficial results. In Switzerland, the World Health Organization expressed concern that the extreme heat in the Northern Hemisphere will test health systems. Health authorities detailed that the high temperatures are hitting the elderly and people with cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and asthma the hardest. Officials also report that this type of weather would affect to a greater extent those who cannot handle the consequences of the heat, such as babies, people with special disabilities, low income, and homeless people. Finally, the organization added that it is working together with the World Meteorological Organization to support the development of action plans to face climate change and reduce the impacts on humans. At the same time, in Greece, authorities continue to fight forest fires. The country's government issued a statement indicating that Romania, Slovakia, and Poland would send some 230 firefighters to fight the raging blaze. Meanwhile, authorities pointed out the increase in the demand for electricity due to the use of refrigeration equipment. Meanwhile, China maintains a 4-week record streak of maximum temperatures above 35 degrees Celsius, affecting the health of its citizens. The Chinese Meteorological Administration reported that Beijing is undergoing an extreme heat wave that surpasses a 23-year record with 27 consecutive days of temperatures above 35 degrees Celsius. The Chinese government urged the elderly and children to stay indoors and reduce their time outdoors to reduce exposure to the sun and tropospheric ozone pollution, one of the main components of the toxic cloud that envelops the city. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. On Thursday, one Palestinian young man was killed, 3 others were injured, and dozens suffocated during a military incursion by Israeli forces in the eastern part of the occupied West Bank city of Nablus. Family, friends, and loved ones mourned the remains of 19-year-old Badr al-Mathri, who died of bullet wounds. Local media report that the young man was the victim of an operation in which large forces of the occupation army stormed into the eastern area to secure the settlers' assault on Joseph's tomb shrine. Meanwhile, the director of the Red Crescent Emergency and Ambulance Center in Nablus, Ahmed Jibril, said that the occupation forces attacked with rubber-coated metal bullets the ambulance used to transfer the wounded to care centers. In Israel, a new day of protest is being held against the judicial reform promoted by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Around 250 demonstrators began a march from the capital, Tel Aviv, to occupy Jerusalem in rejection of the Israeli executive's actions. Thousands of protesters subsequently blocked train stations and roads across the country on the eve of a parliamentary vote on a key clause of the reform agenda. The reform, which is advancing at the legislative level, proposes to reduce the powers of the judiciary and increase those of the executive. Kenya was bracing on Wednesday for another tense day of opposition protests. The government promised to respond firmly to any outrage following deadly violence at previous rallies. The Azimio coalition, led by veteran politician Raila Odinga, called for 3 consecutive days of demonstrations starting on Wednesday against the policies of President William Ruto, whom they accused of exacerbating the rising cost of living in this East African country. The day began with public schools closed at the request of the authorities in 3 main cities of the country: the capital Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. It is the 3rd time since the beginning of July that the opposition has organized such a day of action.
As a country, I think we are going in the wrong direction. It's only for the 2 leaders to come together and respect each other and agree on the way forward.
Today there is no business. Since morning, there is no business, no people moving around. Even as you can see, the shops are closed. We are just like that, no business at all.
Yeah, definitely it's affecting our business, matatu sector, because people are afraid. Like today, they are indoors, because they are fearing, because there is insecurity.
In Algeria, at least 34 people were killed on Wednesday when a passenger bus collided head-on with a commercial vehicle and burst into flames in the desert. According to Algeria's civil defense agency, this is one of the deadliest road accidents in recent years in North African country and has also left 12 people injured, many of them with burns. Unverified media images show the bus hull smashed and charred after the accident, which occurred at dawn near Taman Rasset, some 2,000 kilometers from the capital, Algiers. The images broadcast by the local media show the bus turn into a huge ball of flames. According to the country's road safety authority, Algeria recorded nearly 23,000 traffic accidents in 2022, resulting in 3,409 deaths and more than 30,000 injured. A suspected gas explosion in the central business district of South Africa's commercial capital of Johannesburg left several people injured. One of Johannesburg's streets was affected by an explosion allegedly coming from a subway gas pipeline. Images circulating on social networks show vehicles overturned amid huge cracks running across the road. According to local media, the incident in the center of South Africa's largest city has left 9 people injured and around 23 vehicles damaged. The local authorities have already opened an investigation to clarify the facts. Emergency services have cordoned off the site and urged residents of neighboring buildings to evacuate. The 17th edition of the World Poetry Festival takes place in Caracas, Venezuela, which pays tribute to poet Pedro Ruiz. The festival has its motto "With the river on its back," and more than 70 international guests will be participating. The poetic meeting will be extended until Sunday, July 23rd, and during its development, daily recitals will be held in different cultural centers in the capital city and in the 23 states of the country. Also, 100 high school students will participate in the activities. The international guests will discuss with 130 Venezuelan poets the relevance of poetry nowadays. This event seeks to promote the reflection of the ideas shared at the first Congress of the World Poetry Movement, which had its first session in the recently concluded 33rd edition of the International Poetry Festival in Medellin. We have come to the end of this news brief. From you can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.